You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
The source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the province.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khatib.
Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of MedTech Growth Levers. So today we got a really interesting topic, one that I think every marketer deals with, which is webinars. And so this is one thing that's a staple of our industry. I would say like right after doing conferences, webinars is one of those staples for marketers. But there's a lot of ways you can screw it up. Rather than show my screen and everything, I decided to whiteboard this out. We're going to go through just some really important areas. I wanted to narrow this down to 3 important areas when it comes to doing a webinar. So whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a business owner or a medtech marketer, these are the most important things when it comes to doing webinars. Now, just for context, why should you listen to me? Well, for one, I build my entire business off of webinars. I've ran webinars for over 12 years. I've used all kinds of different platforms. And if anything, when it comes to webinars, like that's like the medium that I've used to help build a lot of different companies, whether it's raising money, like Moon Surgical, or driving clinical adoption. So let's start with the main areas.
Quick commercial break for marketing leaders and sales leaders. I don't have to tell you this, but it's worth reiterating that the time clinicians have to meet with medical reps is limited. You know this and feel this. It's been a challenge for med device sellers for decades. Now, with the rising workloads and patient care demands, clinicians' times are shrinking even more. And the window for your sellers and your sales team to meet with these clinicians consists of pretty much just minutes in a busy hospital hallway. The reality is your sellers have to make every second count or someone else will. They must be concise, they got to be efficient, and use highly relevant information to make the most out of these brief interactions. Showpad is all about focusing your sellers on the art of selling, which is about building trust and relationships. And while there's science, the Showpad solution handles the behind-the-scenes prep and follow-up work to make your team more effective. The best part is that you get insights on content and training performance so you can make strategic decisions and invest more in what works based on data. Showpad helps your sales and marketing teams spend their time in more productive, high-impact ways with a multiplying effect on your revenue results and growing your pipeline. So to learn more, go to showpad.com/State of MedTech. Now, let's get back to the show.
So the most important part of your webinar, this seems like it's an obvious thing, but it's not, is the number one thing is your headline, okay? Like the actual thing you title the webinar and the guest, okay? So let's start with the headline. The mistake that I see most companies make, okay, if we think about it, and let me draw this out over here, and if you guys can't hear me on Zoom or if I go way too far with the mic, just give me a heads up. The thing about it is that when you think about the headline, and we look at a funnel, all right, we have top, middle, and bottom. Like everything else in our industry where marketers focus too much, and I'd say service providers too, is too much right down here in the middle of the funnel and the bottom of the funnel, meaning that it's usually company and product related, okay? If you're Intuitive Surgical, you by all means, you can absolutely have a webinar titled like the new Da Vinci system because I don't know, you're a $172 billion market cap company and people know who you are. But most of you are not an intuitive, right? And so the idea is you can do a webinar on your product and company down here. Okay, and again, I want to be clear. This is a general webinar you do through the internet versus, let's say, webinar through a conference or to a society or something, okay? So you're doing this on your own, okay? The key is you want to start moving up the funnel to more top of funnel, okay? And top of funnel, you're dealing mainly with things that are problem related, that are categories, and will attract a wider audience. So for example, if, rather than state your product, you want to state a specific problem and a unique way that it's being solved. So again, what I think for headlines is I always go with this formula: old problem plus unique vehicle solution. And so a lot of people mistake this by saying, oh, like, I'm going to make this up, inguinal hernias done better using XYZ technology. That's the wrong way to do it. What you want to do is, again, think about your unique solution. You want to own a specific problem and category, right? You want to be the educator of that. So rather than saying inguinal hernias solved through XYZ technology, it's inguinal hernias solved through minimally invasive nanorobotics. Okay, you want to own that because that's high enough where, again, that's going to attract your key attendee, which is a clinician, but maybe it'll attract a nurse, maybe it'll attract a scrub tech, maybe it'll attract a hospital administrator, because even that hospital administrator, you got to think about this. There are hospital administrators who try and get ahead, who look at these kind of webinars because they're trying to do one of two things in their hospital. They're either trying to increase revenue and lines of revenue, or they're trying to decrease the costs, right? And so there are some early adopter innovative hospital C-suite leaders who are trying to do that, right? They're not very many of them, but there's enough that it's worth doing it this way. So when you do this, again, I always think of good marketing principles when it comes to every single marketing avenue, right? So when we're doing a webinar, when you're writing a blog, when you're creating a video, you have to always think from a copyright and persuasion scenario of like, how can I strengthen this headline? One of the great marketers out there, great advertisers, Ogilvy, which, by the way, let me step away for a second and grab his book because everybody asked me for book recommendations. Here we go. I love when I know exactly where a certain book is when I think about it. So his book, Ogilvy on Advertising, this is the man who came up with A/B testing. He had this great point about copywriting, which is like every one of your ads have to live by itself, which means that if you spend $1 producing an ad, okay, or let's just say in these days, it's not, let's say it's $1,000, you spend $1,000 producing an advertisement or whatever it is, half of that budget needs to be spent purely just on the headline because that's what everybody's going to see, okay? Now, the reason why I put guest after that is that as great as your, KOL might be, there is a very high chance that not everybody knows who that is, right? And so going with the headline, which is something everybody can understand, you attract the people who are interested, and then the guest strengthens that headline, okay? So it's, if you think about like in the spine world, robotic spine surgery with special guest Larry Lanky, great. Everybody knows who Larry Lanky is. But again, we want to make sure that you get people who are interested in robotic spine surgery, the headline, the purpose of the webinar, not just purely the guest. Always look at your guest in the webinar as an enhancement to it, okay? Now, here's the other thing, by the way. The other thing you have to consider is that sometimes you can't always get a KOL, and you don't have to, right? I've done webinars myself for companies that I've worked at where I was the expert and I ran people through some slides, right? So that's why it's very important to focus purely on the headline. Okay, so got that covered. Hey, Leah joined from Chicago. I like the people over in LinkedIn commenting what city they're joining in from. It's good to see you all. If you guys miss this, by the way, you can watch this in full on the podcast, okay? Now, the next part is the promotion, okay? So promotion, here's what most medtech companies think about. They think about their email list, cool. They think about social, okay, good. And then they stop there. The promotion is not just getting people registered. That's half the battle. The other side of it is that you want good attendance. What's good attendance? If you look at On24, which is a publicly traded company, that's literally the webinar platform company, all of their data says that good live attendance is anywhere between, I think, 17 and 22%. So you get 100 people registered for a webinar, you get 17 to 22 of them showing up for a live webinar, that's good, okay? For me, just because it's med tech, it's harder and everything, I always say, hey, if you get anywhere from 12 to 15%, a lot of times I just go with 15% of attendance, that's a good sign, okay? Because most clinicians are busy, they're gonna watch it on their free time, okay? So the way that you have to think about webinars, and this is a reframe, is that there's all this emphasis put on the live, okay? That's fine. The real money is made in post-production, and I'll get to that in a moment, okay? So email, you want to look at your email list like promoting it at least 2 weeks in advance, okay? 1 month, you can put out some teasers. 1 month is a really far out in advance. I mean, I don't even know. I'm pretty planned out myself. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing 2 weeks from now, let alone a month, okay? So email, you want to start doing it at least 2 weeks in advance, and maybe you do it once or twice a week to remind people, okay? That's to your main email list, okay? On social media, there are 2 places you want to do this. The obvious one is company, the company social, but the other side is your sales team, okay? You want to do it on your sales team because as a marketer, your most expensive and most valuable asset isn't campaigns. It's not this or that. It's the sales team, believe it or not. And so having a plan, and the plan is not, hey, we're going to post on LinkedIn on the company's social media page, and then all the salespeople reshare that. You can do that, but you should also, as a marketer, have a folder or some instructions where you instruct the sales team, hey, here's the asset that was approved. Here are the hashtags you should use. You guys go and post whenever you want this week, but make sure it's posted. And then, again, always think about things from a perspective of persuasion. As a marketer, yes, you should know the persuasion and the adoption life cycle on the technology adoption curve that's crossing the chasm. You have that internally too. So how do you drive that? Well, use an authority bias. So when salespeople post, take the links to all those posts that week, send it to your CEO, call him or her, email him and say, hey, this is a very important thing. I need you to go through and like each one of these posts from the salespeople. And if possible, maybe leave a comment on a few of them. Because when the salespeople know, oh, the CEO is paying attention to this, you better believe that they're going to do it the next time, okay? This is all like the way you run your family, the way you run your friends, the way you run your company. It's all persuasion and brainwashing, okay? So the better that you think about it from now, the more successful you'll be, okay? And it makes it a great experience for everybody, okay? Little side tip for this, for your social media on the sales team, you run a little contest for organic content and throw like a $50 to $100 gift card. You'd be surprised how competitive salespeople are, okay? Now, I'm leaving it there on the organic side. On a separate side, I do recommend organic paid, okay? And again, running these on Instagram and Facebook and X, I highly recommend it. Please use an agency because a lot of you have not run paid ads. This is not the time for you to start running paid ads and figure it out yourself, okay? That being said, okay, LinkedIn, while the cost per impression is a lot higher, it's a lot more targeted, etc. On LinkedIn, the 2 objectives that I like to run my paid ads on when it comes to webinar are these 2. Number 1, which is on the top of funnel, brand awareness, okay? And the second one is website traffic. And I like to run them simultaneously. You pick 4 to 5 ads. It could be the same image, but just with different copy. LinkedIn recommends 5. You don't have to do 5. You can do 3. But that way you have one which is just going to go out to as many people as possible in your niche, which is brand awareness. And the other one, which is optimizing for people who actually click. Remember, when you pay social media, you're paying for an outcome. So if you say, hey, I want clicks, they're going to give you clicks, okay? I always like to go with both these things and run them in parallel to see like which one's going to give me a better cost per impression. On the back end, if you can have landing page metrics set up through HubSpot or something else so you know where they're coming in from, all the better, okay? And the very last one, this is, let me tell you, this is a $1 million tactic right here, okay? Now, many of you attend this event, see that I do it through Luma, okay? Which is, you get to register and everything. Luma's great. For those who are wondering, you can use this for yourself, for your company. It's called lu.ma. Let me make sure that's the right website. Yeah, lu.ma. It's for somehow it's free. But the benefit about that is sending an invite to everybody. Okay, here's the key. I love using LinkedIn live stream webinars. The reason why LinkedIn live stream webinars are great is because it's easy to promote them. Automatic form fill. So that way, instead of sending them to a website, so you can send them to a landing page. Sure, you can do that. If you want to do LinkedIn, you can do that because it will be an automatic form fill. You get all this information, including their personal email address. So while your competitors are getting physicians to sign up with our work email address, now you're dealing with firewalls and everything and spam filters. Personal email address, really good. Plus, you can take all those emails and make a custom audience to target for advertisements later. Okay. Now, here's the multi-million-dollar tactic I have for a calendar. I'm going to make this so simple. Even your associate can do this. You take all the email addresses, okay? Find a personal email, preferably female. And I'll be honest with you, I've A/B tested this. When I send invites out from a fake female address from my company, they seem to get much better conversions, okay? I don't know why. Women are more trustworthy. Sorry, that's sexist, but that's what the data told me. That's what the science says so far. But you're going to take all your email addresses, okay? Open the calendar invite where make a calendar invite for you where you have the name of the webinar. Always put webinar and then live webinar and then the name of the webinar. Put the link to wherever you're hosting it, whether it's Zoom or LinkedIn or something, and take all those email addresses, copy, paste them in. Make sure you uncheck two things. One is the ability to see the other guests, and two, the ability to modify. Leave unchecked or checked off the ability to invite others and send that out. And now you've gamed the system because on average, 50%, at least from my data, 50%, if not more, of the people who receive that calendar invite are going to accept it. So now you don't have to worry about them putting on the calendar. Why is that important? The reason why that's important, because now, once they accept this calendar invite, guess what you get to do? You have control of the notifications. Those notifications are way more valuable than emails. Because email, I can send you an email reminder, once every hour. You may just ignore it. But if a notification pops up on your phone or your computer, you're going to show up. So here's how I like to space it out. I usually do. I know I have terrible handwriting. 3 notifications, okay? And here's how I like to space it out. 1, 3 hours before the webinar starts. A second one, 1 hour before the webinar starts. And a third one, about 10 minutes before the webinar starts. Sometimes I do 5 minutes, sometimes I do 10 minutes, sometimes I do 3. It depends on who I'm dealing with. If I'm dealing with marketers, you guys are all at your desk. So I can do it 2 minutes beforehand and you'll be able to click. If it's with a clinician, I do it 10 minutes so that they see that webinar's starting in 10 minutes. Let me get out of the doctor's lounge. Let me go and get somewhere. Okay. That by itself will massively impact your live attendance. Okay. Now, the very last thing, let me hop over to LinkedIn, see if we got any questions. Nothing so far. Good. The very last thing that I would say is your distribution. So we talked everything about your webinar, okay? That wasn't the main purpose of the webinar, was to do it live. That's not the main purpose. Sure, it's great to do it live where either if it's on Zoom, people can unmute and ask questions, or on LinkedIn, if it's a live stream, it looks live all the time. Go look at what I recommend is go look at my live stream today from this, and you'll see more people engaging with it because it looks like it's still live, right? That's a whole other conversation. The purpose is distribution. So if anything, what you did is you did all this work to have somewhat of a live audience as you create content. Because once the content is created, now the important part is what do you do with it? So of course, you want to send that out to the people who registered, okay? I recommend if you are trying to drive demos, right? Let's say the whole purpose is driving demos. Have a call to action at the very beginning of this webinar and make it very short and sweet. Like, hey, if you're a doctor's interested in XYZ procedure, we would love to talk to you. We have a short 5-minute demo. Go ahead and just click this link or go here, whatever that might be, okay? You can put that call to action in the email blast. Like, here's the webinar. And by the way, if you're interested in learn more about our technology, blah, 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 please book your time here. Even better, don't book time because that's high friction. Make it a on-demand demo video, okay? That's even better. Now, once you do that, of course, put it up on your website, okay? When it's up on your website, here are the things that you have to do. Number 1, optimize for SEO. I recommend personally, unless you really need the data on it, like for me as a marketer, I use Vimeo because I want to see the playthrough data, all this. But in reality, a lot of times it's better just to have these things sitting up on YouTube and make them public on YouTube. It's really rare that someone's going to search and end up on YouTube and stuff versus your website. if you want to do that, it's fine. But it's just good to get that SEO because YouTube is one of the largest like video searches. It's owned by Google, so it's going to be prioritized. But on your own landing page, optimize the hell out of it for SEO. Your headline, your meta descriptions, everything possible. So if somebody searches that thing gets set up. And what you can also do personally, you can take a transcript of the webinar and put that in that same page, but put it towards the bottom of the page. Maybe just put it as a highlight. So I have optimized for SEO. And the other side of it is like make clips out of this and put it on social. When you have a KOL especially come on your webinar and they say something really valuable, you don't want to say, oh man, that was like $1 million testimonial. Now let's wait for somebody to find the webinar, register for a webinar, sit down, watch 15, 20 minutes into it, and then hopefully they're paying attention at that one moment where don't do that. Get that clip out of there. Get those clips out, give them to your KOLs, give them to your sales team, repeat that same process of posting, okay? And then when it comes to social, take those clips, throw them up on social, pick a simple brand paid ad campaign strategy such as brand awareness or website traffic. Actually, scratch that. Shame on me. If you have a video clip, pick the one that's going to give you the lowest cost, which is going to be video views. Okay? So if you throw these clips on social media, put it for video views. And if you're using something like Meta, I think in LinkedIn you can do this as well. Yeah, you can do this on LinkedIn. Retarget the people who watch that clip in full and try and get them into the webinar. Or even on the actual clip, you can put watch the full webinar here. So now you've created this fantastic asset and you've created multiple miniature assets from it for your sales team. So you have, think about it, you have the webinar itself, you have clips, you have a transcript that can be turned into a blog, you have miniature LinkedIn posts. So your sales team, if you coach them, you can say, they can post about this as well. And they don't have to post like it's them talking about it. They can make a post like, when it came to XYZ clinical procedure or diagnostic or whatever, here are my takeaways from Dr. So-and-so's webinar, right? And so now, rather than all this just being on marketing, you have multiple channels, multiple people pushing that content in a variety of different formats, written, video clips, full, etc. So that is essentially my most important, things to come in mind when it comes to the to doing any webinar strategy. And let's just run through it real quick. Number one, optimizing like copywriting a good headline and figuring out who the right guest is. Number two, how do you promote it and how do you tactically get people to attend live? And number three, the distribution. Remember, these first two things right here, 1 and 2, that you're just doing a marketing exercise to produce content. Okay. So, sometimes, you might have a webinar that doesn't have like a lot of people show up. Don't be hard on yourself. It's not over, right? I think marketers put too much pressure on themselves to get like packed webinars. And again, pre-COVID, much better chances. Post-COVID, like everybody's doing a webinar, everything's online. So it's just harder. You're competing with a lot more, right? So those are the main things that I would say. So that being said, we'll jump over to Zoom, jump over on LinkedIn and see if anybody has any questions about this. And if not, we can always take other questions. And if no questions there, we'll just wrap it all up. So let's see. Questions from Zoom, questions from LinkedIn, go.
So Omar, great content. I think this is fabulous. I was wondering if with your audience's patients, is there anything that you would do differently when targeting patients, or do you think the formula, is, I think a lot of it makes sense for patients as well, but just curious if there would be anything you'd add.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think all of it stays the same. The only thing, and again, this is more, this falls more into HIPAA, and so I don't know the answer. So I don't know the answer to this, but I would imagine you probably should not do this, which is like getting people's emails and sending them a calendar invite. That you may not be able to do. I think you can, but everything else is pretty much the same. And again, especially when it comes to patients,
the headline is just should be really optimized, almost like a Google search query. You know, that's how you have to think about it. The only other thing in terms of distribution for patients, I think working with the Facebook groups that are like, patient Facebook group, working with them. I always tell marketers, whether it's a patient group or physician group, ask the administrator and ask, can you pay to have this content posted? Because number one, nobody asks them that, and number two, they'll really appreciate it, and they'll, if anything, maybe they'll recommend it. I'm trying to see. Other than that, I think that's about it. The only thing that I would say is, and again, this depends on how savvy your marketing is when you end up finishing the podcast and you're producing, you're putting it on your website, you have to ask yourself, what is what's the purpose of this webinar? If the purpose is that you want people to consume this content, don't make it hard for them to get access to it. That's why I'm like throw it up on YouTube. So all of my webinars, some of them are like gated on my website, but they're like completely open on YouTube. Because again, you want people to consume the content. And then the other thing is you should consider, distribution outside of just YouTube and your website. So for example, you can put long form videos on your Facebook page, right?
Mhm.
I don't think you can necessarily do that on Instagram. I think you can do that to an extent on TikTok, because I know you do TikTok lives, but the whole idea here is like, how do we make sure that people consume this content? And once you have that content, in terms of paid ads, you can just retarget people based on who shows up on your landing page. So then you can create, let's say, an ungated to avoid HIPAA. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I think you can do this to avoid HIPAA. For patient webinars, don't make it a form fill on your website. Make it open. SEO optimize the hell out of it. Put a Facebook and put a meta pixel on there, or along with LinkedIn and X and everything else that you want to do, and just retarget people who visited that page with like clips and other information and other places, so you can serve them that information. That's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Great question. All right. Anonymous question. All right. I always like to be careful how I read anonymous questions so I don't out the person. Okay, so the anonymous question is, okay. I'm going to read this in full, actually. So my CEO is a bit of an a-hole and doesn't understand marketing because because he feels that unless a lot of people show up to the webinar, it's a complete failure and we shouldn't do it again. How do I work around this? Okay, I know how you feel to the person who put this up. So here's my recommendation: is that it's all about setting expectations, and so don't put that all on yourself to go and combat the CEO and talk to him or her about this. Align yourself with sales, this, sort of agree on an outcome and everything. Present that, and if you present it in an objective fashion, that helps. So I had a CEO who was a major a-hole about this, and what I would often do when I presented a webinar, like a strategy, I would say, hey, here's the webinar, blah blah, and then I would put a hypothesis around my expectations, and I would put numbers to it. So I would say, hey, like we're, our email list is this many thousands. We expect like this much of a conversion rate. This is how many people we're going to attend. And then I try and use this is how I found out about On24. I was like, I need third-party data so that it's not my opinion. It's like a fact, or at least close to a fact. Which I would say, hey, by the way, based on On24, they run all these webinars. This is a percentage of what a good webinar is considered. So I'm hoping for this many. But considering we're dealing with clinicians, it's really hard to coordinate schedules. We did the best talking to our clinicians to figure out what day of the week is best. I think we're going to get this percentage, which is going to turn out to this many people. So now there's that expectation set, right? And if you don't meet it, at the end of the day, if you have like a really one-dimensional CEO like that, which unfortunately there are a lot of CEOs like that in our industry, there's becoming less of them because people are understanding that marketing is, it's very nuanced. I hate to say this to the young marketer who just asked me this question, but you should consider leaving, honestly. It's very important to pick the right people to work for in your career, because especially as a marketer, what we do is changing literally now with AI. it's changing on like a weekly basis sometimes. And so if you cannot be in an organization where you feel that you're being supported, you're able to do your best work, and you're able to do that without getting like reprimanded, or I don't know if this has happened to you, publicly humiliated or reprimanded, like you need to leave that environment personally. And for the person who asked this, like shoot me a message if that's if what I described is true to you. I might have some companies for you that I can recommend. So good question. And good on me for not outing that person by accident. I did that a long time ago by accident. I said the person's name, but all right. Let's see. Any other questions? Let me head over to LinkedIn and see if we have any questions. No questions there.
So Omar, another question for you.
Yeah, Brianna, bring it on.
You mentioned you've tried a lot of different platforms, and patients have seemed to struggle with Zoom a little bit. So we switched to Webinar Jam because it was browser based. What has been your experience with the platform to host the webinar in, specifically targeting an older patient population?
I personally, I think Webinar Jam is great. That's really important that you pointed that out, which is like something that's browser based. Some of these platforms, so like Zoom is the most common one, but like outside of Zoom, there are ones where like you have to download that. Like it's really dumb, and and some of these web hosting platforms are like, oh, but you get all this data and everything. I'm like, what use is the data if like nobody shows up? So Webinar Jam is great. But again, my bias. So let me back up for a second. The beauty of using something like, let's say, Zoom is with Zoom, somebody can unmute themselves and ask questions. I love that. But again, what's the purpose of the webinar? The purpose is to get great Q&A. Maybe most of the time is consuming the content. So this is why, like me personally, I have really taken a liking to live streaming. And so LinkedIn, for your situation, I would not recommend. I mean, you could try it, but LinkedIn events may not be the right one. But I love LinkedIn because it's like on platform. Streaming directly onto Facebook and Instagram might also be another case. And again, like if your goal is to get like actual email address and everything, maybe that's not the right way. Although Facebook does have events, so you can have people sign up that way. But other than that, like I like Webinar Jam. I think it's a really good one. The other one that I know of is Goalcast, but I haven't really personally used that. But yeah, like again, very important to make sure that's browser based. There's one guy who started like a competitor, Webinar Jam, really cool software. The problem is you got to download it. And I'm like, this is an issue. So that's what I would say. On24 is also On24 is good, but like first it's really expensive. And I mean, I'm talking about my experience with On24 a couple of years ago, so this may not be fair, but I just feel like there are better platforms that are more affordable with better user interfaces than On24. I think the benefit about On24 is that when you pay that much, and we're talking about like 10 to 12 grand a year, you get like an account executive and everything. So if it's somebody from On24 feels differently, you should hit me up. Consider sponsoring my show. I'll use your stuff again if you give me a free account. All right. What other questions do we got? Let's see. Brianna, if you have another question, don't hesitate. All right. I think we got it done. So thank you all for joining. Again, if you're interested in joining these, always check the show notes below or check the LinkedIn post. We do this live every Wednesday. And if you wanted to re-listen to this or share it with your team, go to the State of MedTech podcast, look up the marketing category, and you'll find them. And just to like real quick recap again, headline and guest, copyright that. Always remember the guest. Unless the focus is purely the guest is going to enhance the headline. Okay. So the headline, you're better off getting a damn good headline than like a damn good guest and a bad headline. Okay. Secondly, promotion. How do you do it? Through email, through social, and more importantly, using the calendar invites to send it out directly to people. Leverage your sales team. They're your most expensive asset, but your most valuable asset as a marketer. And finally, your distribution. What do you do with this asset? Because like once you do a webinar, it's not a one and done thing. That's the one thing I want people to get away from. It is a asset. It's a marketing asset. It's a sales asset. It's a clinical asset. So always think about that. These things live on for a long time. So with that being said, thank you all for joining. We'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who'd really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.